You have been to Singapore. I think you have observed some of the teaching levels in Singapore. I mean, so what kind of differences you have observed between the Singapore education system and American education system?
Oh boy, yeah, great question. I think I alluded to it a little bit already. In Singapore, the students are they would say streamed. We would use the term tracked. So kids take an assessment when they are about 10, 11 years old. They take a national assessment, and that will rank them, and that will place them into a grouping of students, and they will follow that grouping of students all the way through their secondary school. And so it lumps all the kids who have the highest scores together, and then the kids that have the lowest scores together. And in the US, we don't do that. In fact, it's kind of against the law, really, in most places to put students in groupings like that. So we have students that are, I mentioned kids in class that can barely read, to students that are really gifted learners in the same class. That's a huge challenge, because now the more I've taught, the gap has grown dramatically. And so teachers are really struggling to help the students at the lowest end and the students at the highest end. We tend to focus on the kids that are absolutely struggling at the lowest end, and we forget the kids at the higher end. And so that was one of the very biggest differences. They are moving away from that now, because they've realized for a while that it does create groups of students that think they're better than other students, and that's not a good thing in the long part of it. They need to interact with everybody.
So participants, any more participants? Please try to interact with our guest teacher. Any more? So, John, again, I have a question. Your participants are just thinking about the questions probably. So among all the education systems in the world, which education system you think is the best, and which is suited for the maybe for third world, I mean, for developing country students? So you know that American education system may be a bit different from our education system. So after having been to many countries across the globe as an educator, so which education system you think is the best one?
Wow, that's a really good question. There's elements of every system that I've researched and been in that I've really liked. I do, as I mentioned here, enjoy that concept of students really driving their learning based on, yes, their interests. Obviously, they have to understand the conceptual things and foundational knowledge, but then moving forward at what their pace is, rather than in our model is everybody together in one class and we're all going to try to move forward. And I've just explained how incredibly difficult that is when you have students of multiple skill levels. It doesn't make sense. It's not very practical. I love the Finnish system. In Finland, it is, and we experimented with this a little in the United States when I first started teaching, with 2 teachers in the classroom. We had a large number of special education students in the class, and their teacher would come with them, and we would work together. So while I was giving instruction, that special education teacher was working with her students, but working also with other students. So it didn't seem like they're getting special treatment. We were moving around, we were interacting with each other. And that's part of the Finnish system, is 2 highly qualified teachers, where one is doing the instruction and the second is working with students that need help. And so I love that aspect of it, team teaching with each other. And any school that I would love to work at would have that collaborative aspect, because it's a recurring theme here in the discussion. It's teachers helping teachers develop curriculum and lesson design, but also working with each other and working to our strengths and becoming better at it. I love in New Zealand how they incorporate the Maori culture into their school system. It's really embedded everywhere, and not just in a history kind of a sense, but in more of a philosophy sense, philosophical sense, and it's embedded throughout their pedagogy. So something that is very culturally responsive, that's flexible, that can change, can adapt, because our students are changing and adapting at such an incredible level, especially how interconnected we all are now. Much faster than any time in history. And I think we have to be prepared for that, to be open to just about anything research-based, but also we have to be able to change.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. So participants, anyone of you?
Sir, can I, sir?
Yeah, ma'am. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Namaste, John, sir.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, sir. My name is Mangarani. I'm a primary school teacher, and we don't have social for primary students. The subject is environmental studies. Can you suggest any online games to teach this subject, sir?
Yes, I see. I will come up with a list of some good games that are online and available for kids. Maybe you can grab a list for me of subject areas where your teachers are most interested in, and send it to me, and I can put something together for you. We have Chromebooks at our school. So as far as online goes, where it's literally just what can ever work on a Chromebook. And that's what I struggle with that because there's limits to what we can do. And so that's kind of why I've changed to using more interactive games in the classroom. But I'd be glad with a little, send me a list of areas, and I can match them up with some online resources for you.
Thank you, sir.
So any more participants, please?
Good evening, sir.
Good morning.
I'm Mama Ishri from Tamil Nadu, sir. So I'm handling the 6th to 8th standard, sir. Other than any activities online, any games also? Can you share? Can you
Yes.
say, sir?
Yes. What was the area? What was the subject?
English, sir.
Oh, English. Okay. Yes. The games that are if it's like the video game, the games that are going to promote English much more are the games that have that story element with them. And that's just about, gosh, any game. And I've used that with Minecraft, which works on Chromebooks too, is plant that seed of, we're going to tell this story that we just read about in class, but we want to tell it in a game version. And that's one strategy that I've used with students that works really well. If we start with the basics of a game, and we say, here's a game you're familiar with, and I want you to create a lesson. Tell me how I could use this game to teach this story. And then it becomes a challenge for the students because they're familiar with the game. And in this example, I'll use a Minecraft. And so they're starting to think about, okay, I have to tell the first part of the story. I have to introduce the characters. I have to tell the setting. once they're in there and they see these things, then it becomes a lesson in descriptive writing, narrative writing, which is so important for my students. I don't know about you, but I get very basic sentences that don't have a lot of detail in them. And it's almost, it's sad really, because it's almost as if I have to give permission to students to describe something colorfully, to use adjectives. And games help you do that because they can see that, they can smell those flowers or the ocean. They can hear the waves. And so I use that to model a writing activity. And even if it's not a game, I've gone on YouTube and I found most games have an introduction video where they show you what's happening in the game. And so I will use those. The kids get all excited because they want to see the game, but I'll pause it after a few seconds and say, now describe that scene to me. And they will write and write and write. And if I'm giving them feedback constantly, if I put if they're doing it on their computers, I can see that and I can share that writing with students immediately on the board. But even if they're writing it in paper, I'm just going around and I'm pointing out, I'm announcing, wow, this is a beautiful sentence, and I'll read that. And I love how you use this word there. And so the kids then are becoming, they're editing, and they understand the purpose of editing at this point, because now we're diving much deeper into this story that we've only just seen on a YouTube video. So that I use as a sort of an introduction to games and to writing about games, because they see that it is real to them, and I can pause it, which we can't necessarily do in real life, but we can pause and talk about it.
Okay, nice, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Any more participants, please? So John, I think before I end this session, I would like to ask you one question. So the slow learners has been a problem almost for all the teachers in this part of India. So in fact, especially we are in a public school, and where most of the students that come to our sixth class, I mean sixth grade, they come without basics. I mean, some of the students, even they come to school even without learning the alphabet. So being a teacher, I mean, being an English teacher, a language teacher, so I have to balance the 50% of the students. We have, actually, I'm supposed to teach them lessons. So another 50% of the students, they simply come to classroom without the basics. So that's exactly the scenario, and is happening in this part of India, especially in the rural part of schools. I mean, the government schools and the public schools. So in this scenario, and if you are in my place, what would you do, and what kind of maybe the techniques you would like to adopt, since you are the specialist in dealing with the slow learners? So what kind of mechanism you would like to adopt? So it has been a biggest problem, and because I am allotted only 40 minutes. So in these 40 minutes, I have to justify to the slow learners as well as the other learners. I mean, the normal students. So should I teach the lesson to the 50% of students, or should I teach the special maybe basics to the other 50% of the students? But in fact, the government doesn't provide me any additional periods to teach these slow learners. So in my personally, what I do, I make them sit outside the classroom, that 50% of students. I give them a few books which are actually are designed for the third class and fourth graders and third graders. So meantime, the other students, I teach them lesson. So whenever they have the doubts, I make them I allow them to enter the classroom to ask their doubts. But sometimes it definitely disturbs me from concentrating on these 50% of students. So this is exactly the scenario. And even the leisure time, I mean, even the free time, I ask them to come to me and to read the book, a small book that is designed for the third graders and fourth graders. So would you like to suggest any other ways where I can justify do these students who are actually are the slow learners? I mean, yeah, could you please do it?
Sure. Yeah, that's a challenge, most definitely. And we'll have situations that are somewhat similar here, that we will get students that we will refer to as newcomers. So it's they're new to the country, they're new to the school system. In some instances, they speak a language or a dialect that we don't support. And so they really struggle, and we don't do much other than put them in class. And it is, in a way, I see it, because you need that language production, and that's going to, got to have that foundation of a good language production. And so that's been my strategy with students like that, is first make connections, but getting them to speak, and to the reading and writing obviously is going to come a little bit later. But I love that. That's why I love the gameful learning approach, where, as I described earlier, you are breaking down your objective into the task, or its learning progressions. What would it take to understand and meet this objective that's way out here for those kids, but it's not way out there for other kids in class. So designing a lesson in a way that supports independence for those kids that can do it and do it well, that challenges them with in a collaborative spirit, that gives them a chance to produce something that has actual value, and not just for you, but for them. Yeah. That's critical, because we have kids that just we ask them to do something, and it goes on a piece of paper, and we score it and mark it, and they get it back, and they might look at it, they might not, but that's it. We're done with it. So something that actually has value to those kids that don't need your extra levels of support. That way that you can work with the students that are just, they're being, they're communicating vocally with you, and that's great. So can you break that objective down into smaller parts to be successful? That's one of the drawbacks of our system here, is we expect, as I mentioned, the whole class to move along at the same time.
Yeah.
And the pacing, I don't know about you, but we have everything is on a calendar, when you're supposed to get to this, to this, to this. You've only got 3 days to discuss similes or metaphors or whatever it is. And then you have to move on. Really, we have to move on, but what if the kids don't understand it, right? And so that giving them the opportunity to be successful in very small stages, I think, is critical, because those kids like that, if your meeting your objective is up here, they're not going to quite get there, but they still should earn points. They still should be assessed. They still should experience success working their way towards that goal, and be celebrated for that, because they're moving forward. And that's the gameful experience. You're moving forward. You're not falling back. You've made an accomplishment. It was, you read to me, you answered the question, you sat in a small group, and you spoke your mind about this topic, about how you understood. You demonstrated, you built something, you created something with your hands, and we talked about it. Those are all valuable learning experiences. So it becomes this juggling act with every single lesson. I think of it as more, I always see it as more of a unit, a longer term. And I plan for that with checkpoints along the way. so that I'm not just trying to do every single lesson every day in this huge, difficult format, but I try to differentiate in a 2 to 3 week unit that allows me time to get to the kids that are struggling, but also to get to the kids that aren't. And of course, those kids in the middle too, that just need a little confidence booster and guidance, so that working towards competency. And it may just be little steps, or it may be big leaps.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So any more participants? I would like to end this session. Okay, John, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. So we really enjoyed this session. I am sure that most of my teachers got benefit out of your valuable inputs regarding teaching slow learners as well as game-based learning. Thank you so much one more time. And could you please give a final message to my teachers? I mean, on any aspect you can give.
Sure. Okay. It's difficult to take this step. I know with other teachers that I work with, they feel that they lose control of their class if they turn it over to students. And it's not until I demonstrate or they take that risk and they use this Minecraft lesson that I designed, or this board game that we created together. It's when they turn it over to the kids and they see the results, they get it. Because we're so used to, all of us, to having direct everything, because our students, our low performing, underperforming students, they will just sit there. They will. And we don't know whether they're taking it in, but we have to engage them more. We have to get them motivated, excited to really learn. So taking a little step in this direction, I think you will see that the payoff is huge. Giving the kids their agency and putting them in charge of their learning, at least it's just for a single lesson. I think you'll understand this concept of, wow, games for learning is a good thing.
Thank you so much, John. So we will see you soon. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, sir.